So we're back. This is that Build Something series, which is just the generic name I'm giving it right now. The first video we talked about the idea of it with that PMBS Tester tool. Now I'm using GPT Pro to do some research on this, basically for prompt design. So you've probably heard of prompt engineering. Prompt design is ultimately the same concept. What I'm thinking about is the process or the structure of the prompt and the information I need to give it when it's looking at artifacts like PRDs, product strategy docs, or I'm saying analysis right now. So if it has a data set and it has some kind of report or result or findings from that, I think those are three really common things that product teams, but product leaders tend to struggle with. Either they're too confident or not confident enough, and it's hard to really finalize those things without getting a good gut check. So that's my focus on this. So what I'm doing, and this is a rough prompt, I'm still experimenting with deep research and seeing what it can do. I just used 4.0 for this one, just to compare to the 0.1s. But essentially what I'm doing is trying out to do a deep dive into a collection of stories, feedback, posts, interviews, and things that will focus on what mistakes PMs make early on in their careers, what things that leaders catch for the PMs they manage and things like that, what they look for, what advice they have, things like that. So what it's given me so far, it only ran for 8 minutes versus 30 or some of the other ones that I run. So knowing the difference between actual strategy and vision. So what I asked it for is kind of a clear point, what defines it, what it should be looking for, and then ways to indicate. This isn't the best format, but it's okay. I'll work on that later because I probably won't take all this from scratch. Right? So we're using AI to shape the strategy for how we're going to use AI in this, which is what I did in the first part too. So I haven't even started building anything yet, but again, we're just putting information together and shaping the project. So like with previously I had done the crew AI project kind of structure. I might use that. I might also go back to that based on what I learned when I'm thinking about how I want to put this thing together and reshape it. And I want to do all that before I start generating my files, before I start editing in Cursor, because as good as some of the other tools are, it's a pain in the butt to have to go back and change the names of things in multiple places, and it's really frustrating when your app should run and you just keep running into weird naming conventions and inconsistencies that came as a result of copy and pasting and changing things on the fly. So we're going to spend that upfront time doing that. So what I'll do with this, right, I won't do like a rubric like I've done before when I'm trying to get a score or trying to get consistent evaluation around something. What I'll do is probably write out a series of instructions based on the doc and tailor the indicators or these things for each kind of doc. So I'll have it identify, or I'll have the user identify what kind of doc or what kind of thing they're submitting, and then I'll have it pull in a prompt for that one specifically that gives it information, because I don't want to include 3 different jumbled sets of instructions in one prompt. What I'd rather do is have one that's very focused on, say, analysis that cross-checks the data they give for context with their findings, and then I'll have it check other sources to see if that data is consistent, or to ask them questions or troubleshoot, like maybe they pulled data that was inaccurate or partial sets or wasn't a big enough time period or whatever. I won't need to do that in the same way for a PRD. Might have some of that back and forth in there, but it might be qualitative insights, or it might be some other supporting documentation that goes behind it. So I'll design each one separately, and then we'll actually engineer the prompt to either be dynamic and pull in the one based the appropriate instructions set based on the document it identifies, or we'll just have 3 different sets and run it based on what the user chooses to keep it simple. So these are general problems I would expect to see in here. I'll probably, based on my experience, break these out too, right? Like a lot of the time I would say it's not ignoring user research and feedback, but I would say it's either being biased towards some user research and feedback, or weighing it, I guess it's being biased, weighing certain user research and feedback heavily, not comparing the qualitative that you're getting from the people who are willing to give you time and feedback with the actual behavior analytics and usage from your actual users in the platform. So these are things that I'll go back and work through, but I wanted to get a starting point, and this is just kind of the next step. I might even run, let's say if I switch to, it's so weird that you can't switch. I know I can use O1 Pro. Honestly, this is all kind of janky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, I'm going to start a new thread. I'm going to do O1 Pro, deep research. And I'm going to ask it to take the following research and basically make it better as a simple. I'm just going to give it a rough data structure. So the key types of artifacts, product managers produce, the let's say most impactful mistakes, not the most common. And then we'll say best way to identify those mistakes in early drafts. And I'm not putting a ton of time into this, but again, for reasoning models, you shouldn't overprompt, and for Pro plus deep research, I'm assuming it's going to take this context and challenge it and follow it, so it's already structured. I don't feel like I need to do a lot. There is something about the copy paste, the markup that you get from GPT. It's pretty much garbage. Hopefully it can read itself, but this is pretty bad. And when I paste it in some other tools, it's pretty bad too. So deep research always asks for clarification, which is kind of annoying. But you don't have to follow all of these or overemphasize. So let's say for more structured format, yes, clearly separated, to please do include insights and quotes from case studies and interviews or personal accounts. Oops. Then let's say let's lean towards thought leaders with real-world experience rather than blogs or content from software products or services targeting product teams. And then clear instructions for how to identify them in a draft document with supporting context documents like data, interview transcripts, analytics, or related docs. So now it should run, and I'll go do something else for a little bit and let this run for a bit. Like I said, what I'm going to do, ideally, if I can get a decent structure of this, because I don't want to put a ton of time into how I want to structure it. I think in my head I know, but I'll get a draft, I'll put it together, and I'll actually prototype this and play around with it as a prompt with just a GPT or something. And then when I feel good about it, I'll start formalizing it, and I'll integrate that into the agents that need it to be able to run. Then the other prompts from there, I'll either split it up or I'll put it there, are pretty simple. I just have to start building out the functions and stuff like that in the actual app. So again, we're going to end up putting together something like a notebook LM kind of UI, and then it's going to be a basic chat interface. So nothing fancy here. The biggest thing is letting the user upload context and the doc they want feedback on, making sure we're really analyzing that well and giving good feedback on it and challenging kind of anything that we see in there, coming up with a score and making it kind of a fun experience for them. So that's all for today.